I want you to picture the scene. It's the late 4th century, and out of the vast misty east, a storm is gathering. But this isn't a storm of clouds, it's a storm of horsemen. They're crashing across the Eurasian steppe, a whirlwind of hooves and steel, and they are spreading absolute terror across the Roman frontier. This is the story of the man who led them.
You see, this wasn't just another raid, this was a psychological earthquake. What started as just a little dust on the horizon quickly became a terror that gripped an entire continent. For the Roman world, this new power, the Huns, and their leader Attila, became this living symbol of God's wrath, a force so powerful it made emperors sign humiliating treaties with, well, shaking hands.
And here's the real puzzle at the heart of all this. You think of names like Caesar or Alexander. They still echo through the centuries, right? But Attila, a man who almost brought the eternal city itself to its knees, he kind of lingers as this half-forgotten nightmare. Why is that? Is it because he didn't leave behind any great monuments? Just fear? That's the question we're going to dig into.
Okay, so to understand the man, we've got to understand the people he led. Who exactly were these riders who seemed to appear out of nowhere and completely change the destiny of a continent?
The Huns were different. For starters, nobody's totally sure where they came from, though some historians link them to the Xianyu people from the Eurasian steppe. What we do know for sure is they were absolute masters of the horse and the bow, a true empire on horseback. They didn't build cities or walls, they were this flexible, nomadic confederation that just absorbed the people they conquered, like the Goths and Alans. And their arrival in Europe around 370 CE, well, that was like the first domino in a chain reaction that sent waves of other tribes scrambling right into a very fragile Roman Empire.
But here's the thing about Attila's power. It wasn't just about mindless destruction. Not at all. Behind the myth of this barbarian horde was a very calculated and brutally effective political and economic system.
We tend to have this image of a chaotic horde just rampaging across the land. The reality was so much more sophisticated. Attila got it. He understood that fear itself was a weapon. He figured out he didn't always have to conquer a city, he could just threaten it. War, diplomacy, extortion, they were all just different tools for the same job, to get rich and make sure everyone stayed in line.
And boy was he successful. By 443, the Eastern Roman Empire was paying Attila 2,100 pounds of gold every single year. I mean, think about that for a second. That's a 6-fold increase in just 8 years. This wasn't just random looting. It was basically the biggest protection racket in history, run on an imperial scale. In a very real way, Rome was paying for its own potential destruction. And then came a huge turning point. Until 445, Attila actually shared power with his brother, Bleda. But then, Bleda just vanishes from the historical record. Poof! Most people think Attila had him killed. And with all that power now concentrated in his hands, Attila's ambition exploded. He was no longer content being the terror of the East. He started looking west. Now, with sole command, Attila unleashed his most famous campaigns. And his target was the Western Roman Empire, which was already, a bit of a mess, a weakened beast just trembling on the verge of collapse. And just look at how fast all of this happens. It's dizzying. In just 3 short years, he invades Gaul and fights one of the bloodiest battles of the ancient world. The very next year, he invades Italy and brings Rome to the edge of total annihilation, and then, at the absolute height of his power, he just suddenly dies on his wedding night. It's an unbelievably dramatic end to a dramatic life. And the scale of these fights was just apocalyptic. The historian Jordanes described the Battle of the Catalonian Fields in 451 as a clash where 2 worlds collided. You had the rising power of the nomads against what was left of Rome. It was seen as a fight for the very future of Western Europe. And even though Attila was stopped there, he was far from defeated.
It was this period of intense fear and destruction that gave birth to Attila's most famous nickname, a title that would cement his legacy in the European imagination for centuries.
This name, Flagellum Dei, or the Scourge of God, is so fascinating because Attila never called himself that. The title was actually born from the fear of his enemies. By saying his destruction was a divine punishment, they accidentally gave him this supernatural, almost unstoppable status. I mean, how can you possibly stand up against an instrument of God's will? And Attila's response to this?
Absolute genius. He totally understood the power of that title. He never claimed it, sure, but he never denied it either. He just let the rumors and the terror do the work for him, allowing that fear to become his most powerful tool in any negotiation. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare.
But just as suddenly as he appeared on the world stage, Attila and the entire empire he built just vanished. So now we're going to look at his death and the pretty surprising ways his story lived on long after his empire turned to dust.
The collapse was incredibly fast. I mean, breathtakingly fast. Once Attila was gone, his sons immediately started fighting over the empire, and the whole thing just fell apart. The tribes they had conquered rebelled, and just 1 year after his death, the Hunnic army was crushed at the Battle of Nadao. It really proves the entire empire wasn't built on institutions or laws, but on the sheer force of will of one single man.
And this right here, this is the answer to our question from the beginning. Attila's legacy wasn't carved in stone, it was woven into stories. In Germanic epics, he's known as Etzel, a noble and respected king. In Christian legends, like in Dante's Inferno, he's a damned soul burning in hell. And for Hungarians, he became an ancestral hero. His memory was so powerful that all these different cultures took his story and reshaped it to fit their own needs.
So this is what we're left with. Attila built no lasting institutions. He left behind no code of laws, and he founded no permanent cities. His empire vanished almost overnight. And yet, here we are, all this time later, still talking about him. It really makes you wonder what truly secures a place in history. Is it the monuments people build, or is it the scars they leave on the memory of the world?